So this is the Rockin Cowboy Church Annual Conference, and I call this meeting to order. Let the minutes show that this meeting has been announced and has been in the church bulletin for the previous 2 Sundays and is being held on the premises of our regular church meeting location. There are church members present, and at least 2/3 of the leadership team is present, and so that constitutes a quorum for this meeting. So, what I'd like to do is begin this conference with an introduction of some folks. And I'm going to start with an introduction of the leadership team. Now, the leadership team has the responsibility for the functional decision-making, planning, execution, pretty much everything within the church, the leadership team has the responsibility for overseeing. When we choose new members of the leadership team, we choose them by consensus vote by the members of the existing leadership team. And we are looking for people who are already displaying the needed leadership skills to be a part of that team. So I'd like to introduce you to the leadership team and ask that they stand up when their name is called. On our leadership team is Tom and Saber Smith, Topsy and Donna Dearman, Paula Jones, Sage Powell, Rita Dilbeck. She have to go home. Gary Gussert, I know he had to leave. Linda and Amy Levicki, and Matt and Kimber Allen. So these are the members of our leadership team. I want to thank you all for your efforts. And I also want to recognize some outgoing folks. Jim and Doris Garling and Steve and Clindy Kackner served on the leadership team for many, many years. And those 4 have stepped back off of that team, which I think is necessary every once in a while, just to bring in new blood and to bring in new folks that are excited and energetic and to give others some rest. So I sure appreciate you guys' efforts in the past, and thank you. Are there any questions about the leadership team? All right. Well, we also have corporate officers within the church that are chosen to perform specific functions. These officers are chosen by the leadership team, but they are also confirmed by a majority vote of the church. And we're going to do that after the introductions today. The offices that this church has, as outlined in our bylaws, are president. Remember, these are corporate offices. President and the senior pastor serves as the corporate president and the overall administrator of the church. That would be me. There are trustees. We have 3 trustees. And these are the folks who sign the legal documents on behalf of the church, like titles and mortgages, loan instruments, basically anything that needs a legal signature. The trustees have no decision-making capacity in that role. They also don't carry any liability in that role, but they merely carry out, they represent the will of the church with their signature on legal documents. Our 3 trustees are Jim Garling, who is not present today, Amy Levicki, and Paul Hendricks, who is also traveling today. Those are our 3 trustees. We also have a secretary position. The secretary has the primary responsibility of keeping the minutes of all church meetings, keeping track of things within the church like lists of membership and who's going to camp. And basically the person that keeps things organized is the secretary. And our secretary is Kimber Allen. She'll have to wait to quit writing to raise her hand. Furiously taking the minutes. I love it. Kimber Allen's our secretary. And we also have the role of treasurer. as a corporate office. The treasurer has the responsibility of working with the accountants to track and properly record all the financial transactions within the church, as well as making sure all of our bills get paid, checks issued, deposits made, anything that has to do with the financial aspects of it. The treasurer is the person that we go through to make sure that happens. This is actually a position in transition. For many years, the outgoing treasurer was Clindy Kackner. And Clindy wants to step down from that position, but I have to say she's been just so generous in continuing to fill that role. While we have looked for somebody else within the church to fill that position. So again, a big thank you for Clindy and that transition. And I get to announce today that we have someone willing to fill that role. Someone that we've talked to, and I have to say I just love his response. He came to me and said, I've been continuing to think about this and pray about this, and tell me a little bit more about what's needed in the position. And so I did, and his response was, I can do that. So he has very graciously accepted the role of treasurer moving forward. We'll get him with Clindy and with Paula to some degree, and everybody can kind of figure out how this transition needs to happen and needs to work. I feel great because I know Clindy won't just go, I'm done with it, yay! So it'll be a really good transition. But the person that has accepted that position is John Minor. Clearly, that is an answered prayer in filling that. We certainly appreciate Clindy, but we also wanted to honor her request to be able to step down. So thank you, John. Well, these are our corporate officers. Are there any questions about the corporate offices or the officers that have currently been selected for these positions? Let the minutes show there were no questions or motions. And so I want to move on with the confirmation of these individuals in the trustee, secretary, and treasurer positions by a verbal majority vote. By responding yes, are you in agreement to the people mentioned fulfilling their corporate offices?
Yes.
If you're opposed to the people mentioned fulfilling their corporate offices, respond with a no. Let the minutes show that there was a majority vote approving the corporate officers. All right, let's move on to the bylaws. Over the last several weeks, I've mentioned that the bylaws, or Constitution and bylaws, can be read online at our website. I hope you've taken the opportunity to go and read that and look at what some of the changes that have been made to that bylaws are. I've actually had several people tell me they have, so that's really encouraging. I figure if a couple people have told me they have, then that probably means quite a few more have as well. So that's a good sign. If you haven't, you can go to rockincowboychurch.com, and under the About Us tab is the Constitution and bylaws. So the leadership team, those folks that we introduced earlier, in accordance with the existing bylaws, has approved 13 changes to the bylaws this year. Now, 11 of those changes are incredibly minor. They just represent small corrections, whether that be typographical or for instance, allowing us to split the role of treasurer and secretary into two people. So 11 of those 13, incredibly minor. But I want to spend just a few minutes on two of the changes, because they do involve a little bit of a change. First, from time to time, we form various teams. An arena team, a music team, a building design team, so on and so on. And some of these teams are temporary, to handle a specific need. Some of the teams are more of an ongoing type thing. But our bylaws stated that a member of a team must be an official member of the church. Now, I believe official membership is very important. But we as a leadership team also recognize that there might be a circumstance where the perfect person for a team, although they've been faithful attenders and givers and volunteers and participants in the church, might not have taken that next step to becoming official members. And so we added a small statement under the qualifications for participation in a team that says by consensus vote of the leadership team, in other words, the entire leadership team has to agree on this, by consensus vote, a non-official member of the church could be on a team. This would be an exception to the normal course of team building. Basically what we're saying is we're going to trust the leadership team to know when and who and under what unique circumstances somebody might fall within for this exception. Does that make sense? Any questions about that?
Is that something you recommend as a...
It is, and the reason I recommend that is, again, I think the Bible has very strong indications that official membership is a proper response, but there's not anywhere in the Bible that I can point to and say, see, you're supposed to be an official member. And so if it's not absolutely in the Bible, I have a little bit of difficulty saying that we must implement that here. And then the second aspect of that is a lot of times you will know them by their fruit. There are people who have not signed on the official dotted line who are much more regular in attendance and participation and giving and all those things we talked about than some folks who are official members. So it's not always such a black and white issue. And so I just wanted to give us at least the opportunity to override that straight line. Yeah.
One of the main things is they have a public confession of faith.
Yep.
That they are saved and believe in Jesus Christ, which also makes them a member of God's family, which makes them a member of this church.
Yep. All right, any other questions or thoughts? Let's move on to the second change. The second change involves the defining and implementation of the role of elder. Now, the bylaws have always had the provision for elders within the church. And we feel that the appropriate time for implementing that provision is now. I'll also say the Bible is also very clear for the need to appoint elders within a church. So in general, elders are the spiritual leaders and protectors of the church. The pastor is always considered an elder. So we have effectively had just one elder for the past couple of years. And I'm excited to actually have 3 other men join me in that elder role. When I describe the polity, or how I describe how the church is structured, when describing our church structure, I've adopted the phrase leadership team directed, elder protected. In other words, the leadership team will continue to have the exact same responsibilities as they've always had, but that's the directed part of the phrase. And then the elders, for the protected part of the phrase, we actually define the role of elder in kind of 2 different roles. The first deals with their role with the pastor. And the elder will serve as a very important role there, as an accountability partner or an accountability group for the pastor, prayer partner, friend to the pastor. So one of the roles of that elder is to be very close with the pastor and be willing to speak up when needed or as led or whatever. The second role of an elder is their role for the church, which includes praying for the church, praying for the people of the church, contacting, praying for the sick or the hurting, prayerfully seeking God's will for the church, protecting the doctrine of the church, aiding in reconciliation within the church if needed, and just providing general spiritual guidance for the church as needed. Now, I see elders as more of a responsibility than a position or an office. An elder needs to be called by God to fill that responsibility. And so selection of elders I take very, very seriously. And that's something that will be occurring here in just the next few weeks. And that selection criteria will be based on primarily the requirements that are laid out in the Bible for an elder, which can be found in 1 Timothy and Titus. And then also men who are already in large part displaying the characteristics of how the Bible describes an elder. In other words, this isn't a position you grow into. You've grown into, and now you accept this responsibility. So the way that works is once the elder candidates are selected and they have agreed to serve in that role, and it's going to be very specifically asking them to consider this through prayerful consideration of God's leading. These men will be presented to the church for confirmation that they meet the biblical requirements of an elder. And once that has occurred and there are no objections or no indication that they are not biblically qualified, several weeks later they'll actually be ordained into that role. So, any questions about elders?
How long would an elder serve?
We have in the bylaws written that the position, just like the leadership team, is an annual position, and each year at the willingness of the person and the church and either the elder board or in the other case the leadership team wants them to continue that position, they may continue it for another year.
How could an elder be asked not to be an elder?
After they're already one?
Yes.
Primarily, if they are if they're not able to fulfill their role as an elder, in other words, they're not doing what an elder's supposed to do. They're not praying, they're not showing up, they're not helping the pastor, they're not doing any of these things, the elder board can remove them. They can also be removed if something in their life would biblically disqualify them as an elder. For example, they're caught in an affair. Any number of things, any unrepentant sin in their life that is ongoing would be grounds potentially for removal. And then, of course, the elder can also remove himself, or death is the other one listed as removal. So leadership team directed, elder protected. Any other questions? Okay, does anybody have any questions about the Constitution and bylaws in general that you may have read over the past few weeks? All right. Any other thoughts about this subject before we move on? All right, we'll let the minutes show that the leadership team, in accordance to church bylaws, have previously and unanimously approved the changes to the bylaws. The bylaws of the Constitution were made available to all church members, and the changes have been discussed. And what I'd like to do is move on to, once again, by verbal vote, confirming that these bylaws as presented take effect as of this date. So responding yes, are you in agreement to the presented bylaws taking effect as of this date?
Yes.
Yes.
If you're opposed to the presented bylaws going into effect as of this date, respond with a no. Very good. Let the minutes show that there was a majority vote approving the bylaws as presented to be effective to this date. Next subject, the annual financial report from 2021. And by the way, all of these things are outlined in the bylaws that we have to go over every year. And I say that not as an excuse, but it's smart that we go over all of this stuff, kind of at least on an annual basis. So, the annual financial report for 2021. God has very much continued to bless this church. And I believe that the church has been very good stewards of the money. I'm going to give you just kind of the summary, and then I've actually got a copy of the financial statements that I'll leave up here. If you want to come and look at them more closely, you're more than welcome to. But I'm just going to give you the summary. We ended the year 2021 with approximately $182,000 in giving between general tithes, building fund, various missions, special projects, etc. So $182,000 in giving, and we had approximately $60,000 in expenses. Now that's $122,000 surplus for the year, which is just amazing. Just amazing. We were able to move some of that balance towards the building fund, which will help us get that building built. And so I'm just so thankful for that. And we need to continue giving at that level to continue to be able to get that building built and then support the new building. There's going to be costs associated with owning our own building that we just don't have right now. So I'm just so thankful for y'all's faithful giving, generous giving, and keep it up. Keep it up as God continues to work through this church, continues to work through us as we work to expand His kingdom and make Him known. So keep it up. Last thing I wanted to say about the budget, as of December 31st, 2021, so last day of the year, we had a balance in our checking account of about $37,000. In our savings account, we had approximately $26,000. And in our building fund, we had approximately $159,000. So, you know, these numbers look absolutely great right now, and they absolutely are. They're wonderful, but you guys know that that's only a portion of what it's going to take to continue to move forward and to get that building built and everything else. So, again, thank you so much for your faithfulness and your generosity. Keep it up. Keep it up. Which brings me to my final topic, the new building. There's been some good things happening this past year. The biggest, I think, being the water well finally getting drilled, and it's producing good water in adequate amounts to support our future building. We are also very close to finalizing the plans for the building. Be moving into kind of the budgetary stage where we'll be getting bids just to see how much it's actually going to cost. We're going to use that to establish a budget for the building, and from there we'll make the decision whether, yes, that's appropriate for our finances and what God's calling us to do, or maybe we need to back this down in some ways. But that's kind of where we are right now. Whenever we get to that budgetary stage, that's also the stage where we'll be figuring out how we're going to pay for the building. Are we going to get a loan for the building, potentially from one of the local banks? But the Oklahoma Baptist Association has a loan program for building new buildings, so that's a potential. Are we going to do a capital improvement program? Are we gonna, have a specific thing that we're trying to reach by such and such date and ask how we're gonna do that? Are we just gonna make it part of our regular budget lines? How are we going to actually make this happen? That'll be part of that budgetary process as well. Now, last year, I had hoped that by about this time, we would be about to that step where we're making decisions regarding, should we proceed as we have it, or should we regroup a little bit on the building? And while I think that was a little optimistic, and we're not quite there yet, we have had really good progress, and I've been thrilled with what's been done. So I'm not disappointed at all with the progress, especially considering just how crazy things have been with COVID and just the construction market in general. Sometimes it would take literally months to get somebody that you had to speak to, that one person, to actually call you back. So I'm not disappointed with the results at all. So my hope moving forward is that we're not far from unveiling the plans for the building and being able to discuss real numbers and make decisions about it. I wish I could say, we think we'll be starting construction this fall or something like that. It's just premature to be giving out a timeline like that. I do think that in the next several months, we'll have some firm plans. We'll have a budget that's been established. Hopefully have a good idea based on the availability of construction supplies and manpower when we might be able to commence the construction of the building. So still a lot of variables. It's moving forward. Good things are happening. I'm just like all of you. I wish it was happening faster and quicker, and I'm ready to do it and all of those sort of things. But we do have to take it step by step and be responsible and good stewards and make sure we're doing the right thing at absolutely every step. We don't want to end up in a situation where we've built a building or taken a step and it's wrong, and all of a sudden we're having to backtrack and spend money to correct something or to pay fines or whatever it may be. So any questions or thoughts about the future building?
I just wanted to bring up that Toxie was out there recently and the doors were open again. They've gone through the gate. Things have been missing out of it. So somehow with security, we need to get minds together and we've got to stop who's doing this because it's worrisome.
Yeah. Now is this again?
Again, yes, again. So several times he's gone out there. The doors were wide open into the storage. So
it doesn't look like anything is missing to me or messed up or anything. And the wind doesn't blow those things open.
Well, it had a padlock and stuff on it too, doesn't it?
Well, I had a padlock that I was going to put on it, but somehow it came up missing at the last thing, and I was hoping somebody would return it because it's a $30 lock. So, and I have not locked it.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
The gates are locked.
Well, that makes me feel a little better though that the lock didn't get cut off or
No,
something.
it wasn't cut off.
they're going through the front gate.
Yeah.
With the lock, anyway.
Yeah. Okay. Any other thoughts on the building or anything? All right. Is there any other business anyone would like to bring up? Any new business?
Mike, would you have a timeline on about moving the trees? Or
Not at this point, no.
okay, sorry.
All right. Well, if there is no other business, I want to thank you for being a part of this conference and just your, yeah.
I want to say thank you for everybody for doing all this work.
Oh, yeah.
Working on these bylaws and working on the building, everybody. It takes a team effort from everyone. Thank you so very much.
You bet. All right. Well, thank you for being here. Thank you for your involvement, your continued support and commitment to this church. I'll call this conference closed. You are dismissed.